So before I even start, I just want to say spoiler warnings for chapter 1045. The anime equivalent will be put in the description when the anime catches up. But for now, continue at your own risk. So, now that Luffy's in Gear 5 and we're seeing a lot of these different things that he can do, like I said, it's exciting. This hasn't happened. This excitement hasn't been there since, we got Gear 2 for the first time. And really, there's so much we can talk about. But today, I want to talk about, one thing which I think is very interesting to think about and may just end up being a small thing in the background of the whole One Piece story and never brought to the forefront, but still interesting to think about. And the idea comes from all the way back in Marineford where, Whitebeard mentions that one day, in his speech when he starts with teach, it's not you, right? And he mentions that one day someone will come carrying decades of history on their shoulders and, challenge the world government. The speech goes something like that. But anyway, he makes this speech and, you question yourself, what does it mean carrying decades of history, right? Of course, we know there's the whole theme of inherited will, and the will that people have had for decades may be one thing. But on the other hand, I think that Oda likes to take a fun spin with different things. And I'm thinking that when he means decades of history, he may actually be talking about the history of the different races in the One Piece world. And what better way to have fun with this idea than to make Luffy emulate each and every race of characters in the One Piece world through his power of the Gamu Gamu no Mi, or rather I should say the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika. Now, how will Luffy emulate these different races, right? And I think that we've already seen most of them. I don't want to say all, but most of them. And in the last chapter, we saw another one, potentially. And let's just run through them all and talk about, how he emulates each and every one of these, intentionally and not intentionally, because I don't think Luffy's trying to do these things consciously, right? And the first one is obviously humans. And that one's the easiest one because Luffy's a human himself. There's no need to wonder how Luffy emulates a human because he is a human. Also, he's got the Hito Hito no Mi, a human fruit. So that is the first and easiest out of the way. Then we get to the giants. And for that one, I think that's also pretty easy. There's Gear 3, right? Because Luffy himself mentions about Gear 3 that now his hand is like that of a giant. Like he's in Gear 3 at the very least, he's actually thinking of giants when he's doing it. And recently with Gear 5, he can make his whole entire body become a giant. Slight tangent note, I really wish that Robin would get here before Luffy did. The whole idea of making oneself into an actual giant. But I guess we'll have to see how her demonic child power, I forgot what it was called, that looks like. Maybe that's actually giant. But yeah, that's just a little tangent. But anyway, Luffy, Giants, Gear 3/Gear 5, that's where it's at, emulating the Giants. But on the flip side, we have the dwarves, the actual tiny people. And that, I think Luffy has done by mistake already, right? In pre-time skip, when he went into Gear 3, he'd have this drawback of when he stopped, he'd become an actual tiny person. Almost similar to the dwarves that we find in Dressrosa, or rather Green Bit in Dressrosa. And that could actually be seen as a different form, right? Luffy's forms are limited only by his imagination. And potentially it backfired, but almost kind of like Chopper's Rumble Balls, he has forms that he just doesn't know about. And that could actually be seen as him just struggling to figure out how to transform with his powers. Talking about how Zoans are not very, adept at transforming when they first get their fruits. Momo struggled for a while. Chopper's been figuring it out. And maybe that was Luffy stumbling on a form that he just didn't know. And, he'd only do it unintentionally when he was trying to become the opposite, right? So he's trying to become big and he unintentionally becomes smaller afterwards, right? There's some kind of connection there. But again, this is all just speculation. So yeah, we've got humans, dwarves, and giants. And then we've got Lunarians. And one thing that's very common about the Lunarians is the idea of fire. The fire on their back, which allows them to, be Lunarians essentially. Because the fire on the back allows them to take hits, I assume that when the fire goes inside their bodies, it's what allows him to become faster, and they can also coat themselves or their weapons in the fire to do attacks. And when you look at Luffy, apart from the fire on his back, you could say that, Red Hawk and Red Rock, I think, when he kind of uses it on his body and he puts his arms on fire and he does the attack, and that's emulating Lunarians. Or when he makes his body hot on the inside by pumping more blood in Gear 2, and that allows him to move even faster, that's kind of emulating the Lunarians once again. So, from there we have the long-legged, long neck, and the long-headed tribe. I'm not really sure what some of these are called, but all those, it's kind of just his devil fruit, right? He just stretches and he kind of fits into those groups anyway. But then the long-armed are slightly different because the long-armed actually are double-jointed. They kind of have two elbows. And that one seems pretty reminiscent of Luffy kind of almost adding joints to himself in Gear 4 Snake Man. He has the covering attack, which even Kaido said that this should not be possible with your fruit, right? But again, emulating different groups of people, Luffy kind of adding joints to his arms so that his attacks, are less predictable. This reminds me of, what's his name? The boxing guy. If you know his name, just remind me, please. The guy who does boxing in the Coliseum at Dressrosa, right? The fact that he was long-armed helped with his boxing because it was way less predictable and, it threw his opponents off. Similarly to Gear 4 Snake Man and the Jet Culverin, where it throws people off that his attacks can change direction and they're not expecting it. So that's kind of the long-armed, link I'm seeing there. And then, of course, we have the Three-Eyed tribe, and that one is still up for debate what's going on because there's a lot we don't know about the Three-Eyed. And Luffy does not need three eyes, but it's kind of interesting how the three eyes have the voice of all things. Luffy has the voice of all things and what's going on there. But that one is a bit of a question mark for now. The other two, which are question marks as well, are the fishmen because, the fishmen, a big thing about them is being in the water, and Luffy as a devil fruit user, being in the water is not his thing unless we see something new. Gear 5 still, the sky is the limit for Gear 5 right now, so there may be possibility to see something. And the Sky People, I think the closest Luffy has come to emulating the Sky People was when we could see his shadow on the clouds back in Skypiea / Jaya, right? I think that's the closest, but again, I have nothing concrete and I don't want to just grasp at like the tiniest straws. But the last race, major race that we have are the Mink. And in chapter 1045, we see Luffy holding lightning. Very similar, or very, I guess, much grander feat, but still comparable to the Mink's Electro, an ability that is uniquely belonging to the Minks. Again, all this that I'm talking about is a very interesting thing to look at, right? And I'm not saying that Oda's gonna go down some deep hole of this will mean something major, and it may just be something small, a way to explain away the fact that Luffy has these different abilities, just like sometimes we see that the Yonko have somewhat elemental abilities or people on that level, and it's just not explained. But with Luffy, I guess it could be different. Oda could give Luffy powers and he's emulating all these races. How he's doing so, his imagination, the sky's the limit. But the fact that he's doing so, tying in with this whole idea of inherited will and carrying the history of the world's races on his shoulders for decades. But yeah, guys, this is the video. Sorry for the audio and I'm sorry for not uploading as frequently. I'm currently working on a new channel and that's what's going to be taking up most of my time. This channel will be more for, I guess, just for me to just enjoy. No stress of, having to upload too frequently and no stress of having really high quality. That energy I'm going to be putting into the new channel I'll be starting, still anime related. So hopefully it become popular enough that you guys don't even have to look for it. But yeah, anyway, that's been my video. Please tell me what you think. And also, what's the name of that guy from the Coliseum? It's on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't remember his name. I just want to say Hajime Ippo, but that's not right. The Ippo Pirates. Anyway, guys, this has been King KZ. I'll see you in the next one.